that he was third regular combat team 1, batted north of Vallowe, and also had to regular combat team 5 from the east side of the reservoir to strengthen his division for placement at Vallowe. Little mention of that Regimental 11 artillery unit with 48 pieces of artillery located at me, thus overloading that load. In hindsight, Smith failed to use the tactic of the triangular benefit of having 2 instead of only 2 regiments for support of the Camden Reservoir.
Yeah. All right, let me put your book down for a second. I want to bounce a couple questions off of you, and I need you to speak a little clearer because I'm trying to hold the microphone and everything. It's really wearing me down here. You there? All right, so a couple points of interest, like you mentioned in your book, and a lot of that's read from your addendum in your book itself. We know that Vallowe had an unauthorized copy of the Operation Order 25 of McLean in his possession. Correct?
Yeah.
All right. Now, Vallowe is the official Army historian for the Chosen Reservoir and also the author of the Change-In Journal and the Chosen Chronology. Now, I just wanted to make that point because you'd been looking for orders that whole time, the last 30 years, trying to figure out the who, what, where, and why. And you've made the deepest dive into this information of anybody I've come across, which would include Rowe and ebb and flow. And even though these guys had better access than you ever had, they don't reveal this data. So the next thing I want to bring up is that we know that General Childs, on behalf of Almond, flies into MacArthur's location in Japan. And just to back that up a little bit, Almond was pretty much on his own to do whatever he felt needed to do, but Almond was kind of an orders guy. He wouldn't do anything without approval. So we have this situation where Almond's not free to go have a conversation with MacArthur. The things are going south here. He sends General Childs over. What's your impression of what took place in that conversation, and what day did that conversation take place?
So you sent Childs over to MacArthur?
Yeah.
That was the 22nd.
That was the 22nd. Now, what do you think was discussed in that written or unwritten conversation with General MacArthur?
Well, that's that one, like I told you. When I got there, I thought, man, that opened the heavens, and it was all revealed, but I said, not so. In other words, he says, this reply is in 3 parts.
Yeah.
Part number 1, the plan, as discussed, will be implemented.
Right. Now, which...
So that can tell me a darn thing.
Well, but essentially, we can measure out what the plan was discussed by the actions by General Almond after Childs returns.
Yeah, we know what, in other words, now, Childs is the only one who had face-to-face meeting. In other words, the order to implement.
Right.
And he got back, the stuff that was sent to, by radio, was sent to Almond. That's what, like 3 parts. In other words, you're authorized what we discussed.
Yeah.
So, like I said, he discussed it 3 times and approved what he wanted done.
Right.
And he kept changing whatever Almond added and changed. Like I said, he didn't care. Let's get the show on the road. I don't care what road you use.
Right, but see, Almond was making changes because he was forced to give concessions to O.P. Smith.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, the pressure was put on me to get going.
So my point...
He already gave us the Kujan Reservoir. He had already gave the 3rd Battalion, that unit for Sudan.
Right.
For the West, they were already, which is, hasn't been discussed enough. The 3rd Division was west, was farther over towards 8th Army than the Marines were.
Yes.
See, that wasn't really discussed. But they were over there. That's where Sudan come in. That was the separation, which put the 3rd Division over on the west side.
Right.
They were between, there was a little gap down there below where they were. And there was a controversy on if they could slip through there, man by man,
Right.
And get over on the east side, on the west side, with the 8th Army.
Well,
There's some discussion over that, still discussion over that, if a couple guys went through there,
well, as we discussed earlier, though, when you on previous interviews, when you look at the area of operations for the Marine Corps, the Army, the 1st ROC, and the 8th Army, the Marine Corps swath of operations isn't that big. We're only talking about 26 to 30 miles wide, running from Coteau up to the Yalu River. Right? And essentially what you've laid out for us today is that all of that got wiped away because O.P. Smith wanted concessions and he received them. And in the end, they were just going to be a blocking pattern to the 8th Army at UDMD, while the Army 2nd and RCT 31 came in and took over their positions and basically finished what MacArthur wanted to have done in the first place. Is that accurate? Yeah. So see, I'm looking at a map that's showing the area of operations going up, right? That's Dauntless. That's the wrong year. Hang on for a minute. Let me back this out and try to find a map here. I know I got one. I showed it earlier on this interview. I'm trying to put my hands on it. But there's an area of operation line. It's basically 20 to 30 miles wide. It's as wide as UDMD is to the west side of the Fusion Reservoir, all the way up to the Yalu. And in the end, here it is. And in the end, according to the orders that you discovered and the paperwork you discovered, this little area of operation given to the Marines is going to be given to the Army, and O.P. Smith is going to be stuck at Hoggaroo and UDMD and Coteau. Even though those forces at Coteau and UDMD were supposed to break out westward and take on Kangji. But Operation Order 25 says, no, that's not the case. So what I'm getting down to is, even though we don't know what Childs discussed on the 22nd, we can look with a certain amount of certainty, knowing that Almond's actions kind of validated what the plans were as discussed, as circumstantial and pretty valid. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we got it covered, Ray. I think we've been through the gauntlet on this. I've read a few authors.
4 or 5 pages right here. Finish this up, Bob.
All right.
He's got some more stuff here. He's got his complaints.
Okay.
He's got his complaint about the 3rd Division again. And there's some more. The reality of the morning of the 27th.
I don't know why he was sweating that so much. There wasn't that much action down around the 3rd Division. All they had to do was hold an opening road, the MSR, so that they could come out. And I think they did a fine job of that.
Here's where he finished up. I had here on when he wrote this commandant. See?
All right.
In other words, he was stating his case in case of court-martial, more or less.
I think so, yeah.
The reality hits home early on the morning of the 27th to highlight General Smith's costly panic and stupidity. in his attempt to reinforce Hagaroo, as defined by marine history, map 20. This map outlines the forces from Cotonou needed to do that, which included 31st Regimental Combat Team Tank Company located at Hudong-Ni. In reality, what Smith was engaging in here is splitting up his already located at Hagaroo at Hudong-Ni. The tanks that go in, let's see, east of the reservoir, pulling back is rear guard in reference to Hagaroo. While Smith had written to his commander, his commandant, to a mere 2 weeks before, had come back, holding back, full circle to haunt him about small units, task force. Here is continued splitting up of units and assignments of missions to small units, which puts him out on a limb. That was his favorite thing, was out on a limb.
Right.
This method of operating appears general in Korea. I am convinced that many of their setbacks here have been caused by this disregard for the integrity of units and of the time space factor. Now he creates one of the task forces. Things he tests right here. Splitting up his units and assigning them to missions of small units, which puts them out of a limb. A small unit, a task force, splitting up a force of units, and a disregard for the integrity of units and the time-space factor. Smith's comments to the commandant of Task Force Drysdale to proceed at all costs, contrary to Colonel Drysdale's opinion against proceeding to Hagaroo. Nevertheless, Drysdale moved that task force forward at a high cost in lives. Only 1/3 made it to Hagaroo.
Right.
He sent me a message and told me about his situation and wanted to know if I really wanted him to come on through. I told him if it was possible for flying on through, because he had been attacked in the Griffin strength and of which he had a battalion was Lesser Rifle Company at Hagaroo. However, Smith assigned General Drysdale to Colonel Puller's Regimental Combat Team 1, Cotonou Battalion, here to remain in reserve status at Cotonou. A direct vindication of 10th Corps assigned zone north of Hagaroo. General Smith describes and highlights the weak defenses of his forces at Hagaroo. On the afternoon of 27 November, Smith had officially aborted his westward advance towards Neptune, while the 2 remaining battalions from the east side of the reservoir were just passing Hagaroo and would have, as he should have, pulled these 2 battalions into Hagaroo with those battalions of Regimental Combat Team 1. Should have pulled them in. Let's see, creating a full next Regimental Team 5 with 1/3 of the Regimental Combat Team 1 commanded by Murray. Why did General Smith leave Hagaroo so weak? General Smith's own admission, he had no official defensive responsibility below Hagaroo. To the contrary, he states that is supported by the 1st Marine Division on 10th Corps order.
Yeah.
No, the 7th Infantry Division, under order to seize McDonald, now issued same day, 27 November. So again, with the 3rd Division as the 10th Corps, West Flank in zone, ordered to support the 1st Division, the Marine Division on order, 10th Corps order, and the 7th Division reassigned to seize McDonald, and Singdale put in as well. There was no mission remaining for the Florida Marine, 1st Marine Division.
Right.
So,
well, let's add to the equation a little bit some of the other things that took part in that equation. When the runway was completed at Hagaru and the injured were being flown out, they also had the opportunity to bring in, and did bring in, 500 Marines from reserve down around the Hungnam Harbor area.
He didn't think about that till the evacuation was. So the planes coming in.
Yeah.
The planes were coming in empty.
Right.
I mean, you could take out one for one, really.
And how many reserve Marines were sitting down at Hungnam Harbor during that time? Wasn't it 10,000?
That's what that Martin Rush says.
Okay.
The coast was 10,000.
Okay. He could have flown at least 2,000 of them up there and reinforced RCT 31 and cleared Fox Hill at the same time. Now.
Yeah, relieve those men of all that freezing weather they had.
All right, so let's back the lens back all the way back and look at the bigger picture. O.P. Smith complained about separating units, and yet he separated units himself, more specifically the 7th Marines at Fox Hill and then the Rifle Company along Toctong Pass.
On this commandant, that's where you're making their mistake. They're using small units.
Yeah, well, in retrospect of that, Fox Hill held without reinforcement. And the Rifle Company was.
I know. I talked to Dwight the other night. He said that. He says, "Why didn't he put a defensive thing at Fox East Hill?"
Yeah, and then the other side of the board was the Rifle Company further up the pass at Turkey Hill. They were quickly removed from Murray with virtually no problem whatsoever. So. I don't know how much legs I can give him about separating units when he was one of the ones separating units himself. Not to mention the fact that.
He was complaining about it, this commandant.
Well, not to mention the fact that him pulling those tanks out of Hudong Ni and leaving the RCT 31 on their own to die, basically. That's another separation in my book. You know what I mean? It's like he got so caught up in defenses. But let's go back into O.P. Smith's history a little bit. If you look at that book by the Frenchman, what was his name? The story of the Gentle Warrior. Are you with me? All right. So in the Gentle Warrior, when he's writing O.P. Smith's biography, the first combat mission he's given in World War II is to go into, I think it was Greenland or Iceland, I don't remember which. But basically it was just a command post to keep the Germans out of it. And so he didn't have any battle experience coming out of that. So I'm wondering, prior to coming into Incheon, where did O.P. Smith get his battle experience? Where did O.P. Smith get his battle experience when he became a general? Right, one would think that he would have had some battlefield experience, and operating a command post up in the North Atlantic doesn't strike me as a battle position. As more it is just a assignment post under the British. So I'm wondering, when did O.P. Smith get some actual battlefield experience before he was made a 1 or a 2-star general? Do you know? Do you know of any?
No.
I don't either. I'm going to look a little deeper into that. But my point is that he does a lot of finger pointing about who's not capable and who is and who ain't. You know, and they talk about him being all this by the book stuff, but I'm seeing a lot of not by the book. If you're asking for concessions, that's a little suspect at the very least. You know, and I think Thomas Ricks in his review of the whole situation is completely out of context and value. It suffers from a lack of a deep dive into the actual orders and requirements of the Marine Corps, the Army, and 10th Corps in general. I think he's way off base in his conclusions about the big why and out on a limb. So, in any case, those are the two main things I wanted to cover. That tank group, second tanks being pulled back to Honolulu, needless to say, put you all in the jeopardy that you were in. You know, like you were saying, you thought you were at the goal line, and you were only on the 50-yard line. What show was that they put you in? Was that that girl's documentary, RCT 31, Task Force Faith? The one that you... You were in that documentary with Gray and Grant McMillan, and you make the comment that here you were thinking you were at the goal line, you were only on the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
What documentary was that? Was that Julia Precious's one, or was that another one?
Yeah, that's a TBS one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a TBS one. And they said when, you know, everybody was talking about, well, like I said, it was kind of useless what we did, because what Gray said and I said, we were talking about the tank company.
Yeah.
But there was no reference to any tanks being there. That was the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, it was never even brought up, but that was the
no connection to it, really.
Yeah, they didn't follow up on it, and that was basically the cinch pin that knocked out.
They said that dude on me, there was 22 tanks there.
Yeah.
And then when we come in, then it was made, where were the tanks? The tanks were gone when we got there. That's what we refer to.
Yeah, 22 down to 16.
That's where we never knew our trash dump was destroyed. You know, not a trash dump, but our supply dump.
Right.
The tanks destroyed that on us.
Well, supply dump, command post, tank company, and some other supporting infantry out that way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, just like I said, we thought we were home free, and the stuff had been blown up when, as Alman was leaving that afternoon, that 30th news conference down there.
All right, so
He left there for Smith to give him an order on how he was going to extricate us out of there.
yeah, that's the meeting of the generals. That's where who had,
That afternoon, which meant by the time they really left, that was around, I think around maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, about 3:30, that's when the tanks got back to Hageroo.
yeah, they only had to go about 2 to 3 miles, I think.
Apparently, when Al Allman left, he should have saw that ammo dump being blown and the ration dump.
Yeah.
They circle around.
Well, that meeting of the generals, that included O.P. Smith, General Hodes, and General Barr, right?
Yeah.
And shortly after that meeting, didn't General Barr fly up to Faith and tell him he was on his own?
Yeah. Barr borrowed a helicopter that we didn't have them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Smith probably wasn't happy to hear about that bit of data going out either. Just my opinion, but you know, it's easy to be an armchair quarterback in all of this, and you know, you add to it the fog of war. But you know, orders are orders, and like O.P. Smith said, Marines follow orders, right? Except when they change them.
Well, I said, let's cut off and get you got till, I think you only got about 4 more pages here to go on this chapter.
All right, go ahead.
So I'll kind of go through it and we'll go over it next time.
Okay.
The rest of it.
All right, you want to take a break? We'll come back to it next week?
Yeah, whenever we get time, we can go over it.
Well, we covered a lot. I think you did a bang-up job. I've not seen anybody take as deep a dive into this equation as you have. And you've been struggling to try to get this out to the general public for how many years? When did you get a hold of Operation Order 25?
Well, that was 93, I think.
93, and that pretty much opened the door for you to understand how the orders came out, what went down, who was supposed to do what. That was the big light that went off. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, see that other thing that's come up to it is right on the next page or so with Smith's letter.
Yeah.
Letter to his commandant. He believes that when you about splitting up a Marine, you lose efficiency when you split up a Marine unit.
Right.
He believes a winter campaign in North Korea was too much to ask of the American soldier or Marine.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the Chinese had that opinion, nor did I think they cared.
Yeah, that's like saying, just like when I was out on Scott Air Force Base, those guys asked me, we were out on detail, and they say, what do we do when it rains? I said, well, I think it's a natural thing that if it rains and you're out in it, you're going to get wet.
Get out your poncho, I would think, right?
We had bags where we picked up your grass and things. I said, well, you can always cut a hole in them.
Mm-hmm.
Get your head wet, but the rest of you stay dry.
Right. That's too funny.
He told us that, he thinks it's too much to ask of the American soldier or Marine. So, well, he should have kept us out of it. He didn't have any respect for us anyway.
Yeah. No, I feel you. You got anything you want to add to it before we sign off?
No, I think we covered quite a bit. Like I said, I get having difficulty reading some of this stuff.
Well, that's, in all fairness though, Ray, that's what you want. You want people to read the book themselves. This video covers what your book is about, but I would rather...
I was trying because I want to get over, I got some more stuff marked, we could go on forever. I was going to get other stuff marked because I was getting what Chuck Shaw got for his Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
About the Corps. And the Corps is saying when we left, when State left, it says area unknown.
Really?
He just disappeared. Yeah, he says from 10th Corps.
Wow.
Area unknown.
So now we're talking, now it sounds like a cover-up. I'm not trying to be conspiratorial here, but that is what it said.
Yeah, that's what, I got to look up, but let's see, the next chapter I'm on is 7th Infantry Division Organization, 21 November, 22 December, Hyson John, Chosen Reservoir, Hung Nam, page 1, original classification, stamped, secret, tagged by DLS, David Singer, and it is on, I think, let's see, 5/1, 2010. It was from by Charles Shaw on 7/28/28/03. Master number 8988955. Special thanks to Chuck for passing this on to me. A thesis by Charles, and then this thesis by Charles A. Combs I got earlier in chapter 3 or 4, 8, I think. And I got on there. Yeah, that's on. He's on that pretty well on page 104. I got in there of the 7th Division, what they're saying about us.
Yeah.
I pretty well got it in bold print so you can see it easy enough. Oh, that especially where it says Operation Unknown, where you proceeded to.
I don't know how it could be unknown. I mean, you all had very minimal air support, but the air support knew where you were. How could it be unknown? I'm just saying.
Somebody can see, because that was the first thing. See, because when MacArthur made that thing, he made that thing like on on the 3rd for him to move. In other words, right away, as soon as he got the message over there, then that's when he grabbed faith.
Yeah.
See, so that's what started that. And so nobody really knew about it. That was, in other words, Charles told Alman, and Alman reacted right away. And all the Army knew is, hey, they're leaving. They're leaving the area. They're leaving the map, that map area. They're on that map.
Yeah.
Okay, well, where are they going? Well, you don't know.
Wow.
They just pulled out because they're on the road anyway.
Right.
They weren't like, you didn't go into the area and say, mount the trucks and get on the road. They were already on the road.
Yeah.
They were going to Sewell, up to Suwan.
Yeah.
You know, where was that? Darn it. Samsu.
Samsu. There you go.
They were going up to Samsu.
Right. Fun times, huh? What's your most vivid memory about your time up there? Was it being in that little punch bowl dugout area by the track?
Yeah, well, I got this here Chapter 8's another one with command report. There's a lot of it in there.
Yeah.
Period 27 November to 12 December.
Okay. We'll get into that.
The new zone to the west.
Right. We'll get into that. It's interesting. It's interesting when you go to look at the 8th Army's advance into the Yalu River, start around October. That when you look at their most northern point, and this is coming from the West Point Atlas map, when you look at that, their most northern position, they're being attacked from behind. And they're coming in from 2 different directions. You know, so for me to think of it in terms of, is that North Korean or Chinese, the map says it's Chinese counterattack. Well, that would mean that they've already crossed the Yalu and are part of the battle, right?